Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
Back. Another week, another podcast.
Here we are.
Another amount of time, another podcast. This past week we had issues because we ran out of memory. So the way podcast hosting, the way podcasting works is you have to pay for a hosting service.
Right.
And most of the time we can do like one episode a week with no time limit and everything. Is fine and it's not an issue because you pay like for different levels. Mm-hmm. And those months with the 5 weeks,
they're a problem.
They get you. So we ran out of space. So there was a week where
we did
didn't.
the special episode too.
Yeah. And our episodes were a bit longer this past month as well because we have a lot of brilliant things to say.
Obviously.
But all this is to say. The funny
people
thing
are like, I don't care.
I don't. You know what? A lot of people probably do care about the ins and outs of podcasting.
You think?
I get that so often. I'm going to a conference about that in October.
You are?
Yeah. So
I feel like I should know this. And this is the first I'm hearing about it.
It's probably buried under a lot of information in your brain right now.
It's true. I'm juggling a lot.
Yeah. All this is to say, people probably do care. If you don't, then I'm sorry. Now you know something. And I realize it's even a little less important because that episode will have been released and this is the follow-up episode where we're not necessarily concerned about typing. So, we move on, we move forward. Hi, welcome to Sugar and Spikes. I'm Dez.
I'm Tammy. Psychologist extraordinaire.
Yes.
Just kidding.
And
I am a psychologist, but
and extraordinaire.
And extraordinary.
Yeah. I just show up and
you can't follow that.
Yeah, I can't. I'm the one that says we should do this.
Marketing brilliance. Marketing
Maven, that's what my Instagram says.
Oh yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah. Sugar and Spikes, the podcast where we're semi-snarky, a little sarcastic, and bring some science to the big bad business world.
Yay, science!
Woo! So
I always feel like we should put our hands in and be like, go science.
So yeah, this week we're kind of doing a bit of a different spin on stuff. And a lot of times we talk about how to navigate business and maybe you're an entrepreneur, like your own business or your job, things like that.
How to make mental health care relevant to you.
How to make mental health relevant. But a lot of our episodes a lot of times we talk about when work isn't going great navigating the messiness of work.
Or like when you should leave or like your boss is an ass.
Yeah. So like kind of those elements.
Like when life is rough. When work life is rough. Tough, yeah.
And managing all of that and keeping everything else going. This week, it's all coming around.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's been a
hot minute.
So this week we're flipping it a bit. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to talk about navigating life. And I do want to have a bit of a conversation around navigating work stuff, even when it's going good, but the rest of your life feels like it's crumbling.
Oh, yeah. Kind of super relevant this week.
Right? Well, and it was something that I was dealing with kind of throughout this week because last week was really great, got really positive feedback, all these things. Very, very positive week at work. And this past week, seemingly out of the blue, I would say like my anxiety was just at a 7 or 8, just pretty continuously.
The whole week?
Yeah. It was really, at the start of the week, it was really just a week. And then like things happened and I was like, well, this explains why. Like there was
Right.
something in the air, right?
Yeah.
Like looking for that
It
reason.
kind of feels like it.
Trying to find that bit of a reason. So this week I was kind of walking through life where it was like, why am I feeling like things are crumbling when all of the outside information points to things are okay? And I know you've had a bit of a week, but with a different experience, if you want to kind of lead into that.
Yeah, so just some, difficult family news that I'm trying to kind of process and deal with. And, I think, but like, it's such a mind fuck too when things are going really well at work,
Mhm.
but like your life is in shambles otherwise. And
Mhm.
you're like, I'm happy, but not.
Mhm.
It's going great. No, it isn't. Right.
Mhm.
So it's like this mind fuck that you have to kind of almost turn off all the crazy crumble as you walk into work. And we're at work a long time, right?
Mhm.
Like 8 to 10 hours a day, sometimes longer.
Mhm.
So how do you shut off all of that and be like, okay, I'm here, I'm centered,
Mhm.
I'm great, when that's not true,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's even more complicated for entrepreneurs, folks who work from home, where like if you have an office job, you go in, you're there, there's that kind of separation and
Mm-hmm.
this idea, not that you can, but this idea that you leave the rest of your life like at the
Well, you
door.
kind of can, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like a physical, I have to get in my car or get on the bus or however you're getting there, train, and you're going somewhere different
Mhm.
where everyone is not intimately connected with your life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to separate that way. It
Mhm.
doesn't make it easy to deal with, but
Mhm.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Um so I guess yeah, like how have you been navigating it? Like
So how have I been navigating it?
mhm.
I think just trying to be gentle with myself
Mhm.
and to recognize like this is a big situation
Mhm.
and how are you going to deal with it and kind of getting some plans together,
Mhm.
because it would involve me traveling.
Mhm.
So and really thinking those details through
Mhm.
and also being like, you know what, I do have some things that are on a deadline, but they are not a deadline today.
Mhm.
And so I am going to do what I can
Mhm.
today and go home.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, like, my to do list never gets shorter,
Mhm.
right? Like, there's always going to be more.
Mhm.
There's always going to be, like, not necessarily a crisis, but like high intensity kind of needs, something super important they need right now.
Mhm. It's
That's
always calling for your attention.
right. Then there's always going to be that just because of the nature of my work. And so just recognizing, hey, this is where I'm at and this is what I can do. And, I can probably improve. And
Mhm.
this is where I'm at,
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about that. That's a huge coping skill, right? So,
Yeah.
kind of really being thoughtful about like, hey, I teach these things and how
Mhm.
am I going to put them into practice in my own life right now?
Yeah. I think it makes me kind of think of being on the flip side of our vacation episode that we did a few weeks
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
where, I was challenging myself at that point to be like, well, what's the expectation? Like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I was kind of forcing myself to not. But
Mm-hmm.
with this one, it's almost the same because it's checking in what really needs to be done
Mm-hmm.
versus what needs to be done next week, things like that.
Yeah, it's all about like prioritizing in a thoughtful
Mhm.
way. Only on one end, you're like, oh, vacation, it's amazing. And on
Mhm.
the other hand, you're like, oh no, I have to deal with this other emergency. So,
Yeah.
but it's prioritizing, but looking at it almost on opposite sides of the
Exactly. Like it's kind
problem.
of two sides of side not two sides of the same coin, but yeah, it's the opposite ends of the spectrum, but using kind of that same skill of does it matter in the moment?
And I think the challenge for me, and I can't speak for anyone else,
Mhm.
like the challenge for me is that when there's health things going on for family members,
Mhm.
for me, I'm just like, work is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
This is stupid. Like, I don't even know why we're doing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is pointless. It's just something that
You get angry when you cope.
I know.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just
Mhm.
like, sorry, like, I'm not going to talk about the current situation, but
Mhm.
like my dog, when he died, well, it's been a little over a year. I had to go to a conference like 2 days later,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting in the conference and I'm like, why am I even here?
Mhm.
This is stupid. I almost just walked out. But no, I stayed. I did what I needed to do, and it was
Mhm.
good because I got some space and I was out of town, and it was fine. But like, that's just how I do it.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The whole world is stupid.
Everything's stupid. It's interesting because it really speaks to the differences in coping styles and like our styles in managing what's going on. Because with health stuff and with large situations, anything that's uncomfortable,
Mhm.
actually, not even necessarily health stuff, but in terms of like group situations that are uncomfortable, even I get really jokey.
Okay. Oh,
And
yeah. Like when people pass away and
oh
stuff.
god, yeah. And like I've noticed it even in lesser situations, to where I've started to notice it's in the uncomfort.
Oh, yeah.
Like the uncomfort is what makes me say that.
Yeah.
To where I would just say like the most, not necessarily offensive, maybe inappropriate things.
Kinda.
And I just like, and that's me, guys.
So, listeners, how do you cope? It's not all or nothing, right? So I get kind
Yeah.
of angry. I'm just like, fuck all this business. And Des gets all jokey and like wants to make people laugh.
Yeah, well, no, it's almost that savior complex, right? Where this isn't a great situation. But then I've noticed also sometimes like I'm doing it just for myself because I'm like, I feel uncomfortable. So let's break that ice.
Right?
Um,
But I think it's a good lesson and
mhm.
like a very obvious example of like providing the framework and then the person provides the details.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is the extreme situations can clue you in to smaller patterns of behavior.
Mhm.
Like I noticed that thing about me, you're right, like through when I had family like dying and stuff.
Well, we talked about in the death and dying episode.
Yeah, we talked about that, and that was something I knew about me. But then once it became, I think it was really after that episode, like when it was like at the forefront of my mind, and I was able to think clearly and not dealing with a loss, where I noticed, oh, I do this too in lesser doses in these types of situations.
Okay.
You know, so I think, and I mean that's one thing we know about behavior, right? It's repetitive.
Right.
You know?
Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior, blah, blah, blah.
And we only do something if it suits us, like if we get something out of it.
Yeah, it's functional, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I haven't been acting like that this week because I mean, we're talking about like different things. Like your world isn't going great in the moment. Me, and I know like we were talking about this right before we recorded, I'm like, I've just had this feeling and I feel like there's no legitimate reason. We can go back and forth about that all the
It's
time.
the moon.
It's I've been in a space, and I can say that in those moments it's been even more frustrating because it's like, well, I don't have anything to necessarily point to, and I'm not helping my situation by just kind of like dealing with it, because so often we talk about like acknowledging it and sitting with your feelings, but doing that just increases the anxiety more because it's like, well, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, things like that. And then it just becomes like this whole spiral, you know?
Like
Which,
you can't sit with the anxiety. It makes you more anxious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, so I'm going to sit with my feelings. Sitting with my feelings means I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. So now I'm sitting with these anxious feelings, and I'm very aware that these other things need to be done.
You know what I think is funny is like when we say sit with your feelings, it doesn't necessarily mean like sit in a darkened room and go and like don't do anything else.
Right.
You can sit with your feelings and still continue to move forward and do what you need to do
Mhm.
while being very realistic about this is what's going on.
Mhm.
Right. So like I went into work yesterday and I did what I could do, and at
Mhm.
the same time recognize like I'm having kind of a tough day,
Yeah.
and so like I may not be as productive as I want to be,
Mhm.
and I'm still being productive in some way,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's interesting that you say that to me, because like sitting with our feelings doesn't literally mean sit with them.
Mhm.
Like sit and don't do anything. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does, but more often than not it's just like, so like I talk to people a lot of times who have like test anxiety.
Mhm.
Like go in and take your test, and it's okay to be anxious. Like the more you
Mhm.
try and push it away, the more anxious you're going to get. The more you
Yeah.
try not to be anxious, quote unquote, the more anxious you're going to be.
Mhm.
So I talk to people about like, hey, you just see like the anxiety like little person sitting on your
Mhm.
shoulder, and you're like, hey, what's up, anxiety? High five. Like I
Mhm.
feel anxious right now. Of course I feel anxious right now. Like this is a big deal, right? And
Mhm.
so then you can go in and it actually helps you to be more calm,
Yeah.
because you're like, oh yeah, I'm anxious. This is that thing I do when I have tests, right? And you
Mhm.
kind of know your process,
Yeah.
right? Rather than being like, I'm not anxious. I'm not anxious. I'm not anxious. Well, all that does is
Calm.
right, like
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
That's a really good point, and I think so often it's so easy to get caught up in those cycles, like especially with writer's block, which is just kind of the worst in terms of a mindfuck that you do to yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's, oh, I need to be working on this. I have nothing to say. Oh, I need to be working on this. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. And then you're in this place of, I'm legitimately out of words.
But the thing is, like, the best thing for writer's block is
Mhm.
to take a motherfucking break.
Yeah.
And yet, when we have it, I've done this with academic writing.
Mhm.
I'm like, nope, I'm just going to sit at this computer and
Mhm.
fucking power through this, and it's just going to come to me. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, no, it didn't. And really, if I had just taken 20 minutes to walk away,
Mhm.
like, that would have been more productive, but it doesn't feel more productive.
Mhm.
Right?
I mean, on the flip side, like your anxiety example is something that I do quite often with writer's block, where I like sit down, I'm like, I don't have anything to say. And it's like, I'm literally just typing to physically type.
Well, you
I
do
don't
free
know
write,
what,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, get it out and we'll figure the rest out later,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, I don't know. Like there clearly isn't one way to navigate any of those types of situations.
Or any situation
Mhm.
ever. Everybody has their own way, and some are more effective and some are less effective, and some can be tweaked and some need an overhaul.
Mhm.
And or some just don't have a process and just need to identify one.
Mhm.
Um and for all the ways those look the same, there's like all it's like exactly all the ways it looks different.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it goes back to your skills closet, right?
Yep.
And this idea of clothes and things like that. Everyone's wardrobe consists of essentially the same 3 or 4 pieces.
Yeah,
You
like
have your
pants, shirt,
pants,
yeah.
all of that stuff, just like all of our skills are essentially the same thing. There's something with mindfulness, there's something with breathing, something with self-care and, those broader categories, but then it looks completely different.
Well, like some people like more physical skills,
Mhm.
like some people like more pants, and
Mhm.
some people like more mental skills,
Yeah.
like some people like dresses more.
Mhm.
And so it's like the same kind of idea. Like I don't
Exactly.
really like doing skills that much. I think I've
Mhm.
talked about this before, but like I was taking a class on how to do DBT,
Mhm.
and for part of the assignment was to actually pick like 2 or 3 skills and to do them and to
Mhm.
fill out what's called a diary card.
Mhm.
And I, for one thing, didn't like filling out the diary card. And even when times I had to do it, it was in my purse and then I didn't have it, or it was in my other bag, or
Mhm.
like, I don't know, it was just a mess. So I didn't like that. And so, like, I liked that because I think when you learn DBT, and this is like a total fucking side tangent, so
Yeah.
whatever. But when you teach DBT, it's taught like, oh, you do this diary card.
Mhm.
But then, like, when you, as the client, quote unquote, are
Mhm.
doing it, you're like, oh, this is a fucking drag. So,
Mhm.
whatever. But anyway, I picked 3 skills, and 2 of them were more like mental skills, and one was deep breathing, essentially, moment to pause. And I never use that. Not even fucking once.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, really? I would have thought that was the one I used the most. But no, I like more mental skills. Like that's just kind of where I live. But like other people don't like those. They like the physical skills. And so there's even like that difference too. Side tangent, everybody. But there's still like that kind of difference too.
Yeah. Someone told me once, they were talking, they're like, if someone tells me to inhale and like they reference like some type of breathing, so I forget what specifically, but they were like, if someone tells me to do this breathing exercise one more time, I will do it as I am stabbing them in the throat.
Right?
Like, no.
Like if anyone tells me one more fucking time when I'm not feeling well to take a motherfucking bath, like, no.
Like at that point, like you just lose all credibility with me.
Like I'm done listening to you.
Like stop making
Thank you.
suggestions because you don't know me.
I know. Man.
Dismissed.
Oh my god. Yeah. I like that person, I've decided. Yeah.
But I think also that's where kind of these self-challenging questions come into play of, well, what may help, you know?
Well, what would you be willing to try?
Exactly. What sounds like the least possible thing you could do in the moment.
Right.
You know, which is a fair question.
Yeah.
You know, and so often, especially with activities and things like that, that little bit of energy will roll into larger projects and larger behaviors. I see it probably 70 or 80% of the time with working out, where I'm like, it'll just be this amount of time and then it goes longer. It can, doesn't always, and sometimes there are weeks where it doesn't, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And with the work, that was really what I noticed this week of, okay, I'm going to do this one. This is easy. It needs to be done anyways. Let's do it. And then that, like, I didn't have like this giant breakthrough moment and I wasn't like the most hyper productive person on the face of the planet.
Like the sun didn't shine on you and like the angels didn't sing and like golden light.
And I think that's what people like kind of sell so often. If you start, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
No, if you start, there's a higher likelihood it will be done.
Yeah.
You know, like
this whole idea of like the stupid, like, I have no filter today, but like the toxic positivity, like, oh, good vibes only. Like sometimes life is just shitty.
Yeah.
Like today.
And do what you need to do to get through that one thing.
Right. One of the things I review with clients is like, it's called distress tolerance. It's not called distress go away.
Yeah.
It's called lowering it enough that you can tolerate it.
Yeah. Or distress excitement. Like there's this idea that if you just work through it, you're going to be so glad you did.
It'll be fucking magical.
And that's not true.
Right.
Like, there are so many things where if you work through it, you'll be like, I'm glad I did it. I'm never fucking doing it again.
Yeah.
You know, and those are lessons learned, or those are indicators of that's not my thing, that this isn't a good time. Like if you do something for work and your life is burning down around you and you're done and you're like, and I'm still distracted, that's an indicator that it's a bit bigger.
Well, like,
you know?
And also you just can't be totally on your game all the freaking time.
Yeah.
Like you're never going to be like your 110% self. Like there's definitely sorry. My mic caught. There's definitely going to be like times for that. And let's be realistic. We're human beings. We're going to have bad days.
Yeah.
Like, and you just have to find a way to get through it. And it doesn't mean you're going to turn the day from a bad day into some sort of amazing day.
Yeah.
But it'll be like, I got through that.
I mean, it's a bell curve, right?
Yes.
Like half of your days are going to be better than average. Half of your days are going to be less than average. A couple of those days, you're going to like have a really sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like
bell curve's a bell curve for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I 100% get caught up in the, if it happened yesterday or if I did it yesterday, then I personally put this unnecessary pressure on myself to repeat it,
Oh, yeah.
which is something that I've been playing around with a lot lately of it's almost like I worked in mental health for 10 years.
Almost.
But
Just maybe.
It's this idea of just for today.
Mhm.
Shocker.
And we're done.
Who knew?
Podcast over.
But like waking up early feels overwhelming as a new habit. I'm going to try it just for today. This doesn't really that's one of the bigger things. Or like this idea of like writing because we're working on a book, like, oh God, committing to this many words every day. That's not cool. That doesn't sound like fun. And I know there are going to be days where it doesn't happen. Well, can I do it today?
For 10 minutes.
Exactly. Like things like that of it doesn't have to be a habit.
Yeah.
It can be if you have room to start incorporating a new habit or to start incorporating like new kind of duties and stuff at work. Like we've kind of I've gone off the scale of like work stuff. But anyways, I mean, it applies.
Well, also,
you know?
like, sometimes we don't want to change that particular thing.
Exactly.
Like, we tried it and it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
Like, we go, like, outfits are like that too.
Mhm.
I thought I would love culottes. They're the worst.
Yeah.
Like, you try things on and they don't work.
Yeah.
Right? Or you go to a restaurant and you're like, I thought this was going to be amazing and it's kind
not
of
great.
gross. So I'm not going to go here again.
Yeah.
But you wanted to give it a try because
Mhm.
you were excited about it.
Yeah.
Coping skills are like that too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Or like things that maybe you're curious about it, try it out. Maybe you really like it.
What did you like about it? What did you not like about it?
Mhm.
How could you tweak it? Or did you just say, not for me?
Exactly.
Like, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, like, especially if a skill is like, oh, like mindfulness for everyone. Well, maybe not for you.
There's nothing for everyone.
Right.
Like that's the thing. Like
The 10 steps to pure mindfulness, you know, like,
No.
no. So, like, it's okay for things not to work.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in this culture that makes us think like we've just failed.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you didn't like that? Failure on you.
You're weird.
I know.
Yeah.
Go sit in the fucking corner.
Uh-huh. Clearly you didn't try hard enough.
Right. And then sometimes things just don't work.
Well, and that messaging is so dangerous because sometimes people that are looking at those types of articles or reading that messaging are the ones that are trying the hardest.
I know.
And it's like 10 ways to organize that like a monkey could do. And you know, like if you're reading,
I can't do it, so what does that mean about me?
Exactly.
Yes.
Like that's just
not good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think overall, the general message for this week is do what you can. You know, like acknowledge that there are responsibilities.
And it got you through today, and
Yeah.
it might not be what you need to get through tomorrow.
And I mean, I'm going to add on like asking for help and being transparent, and maybe that'll be next week's.
Okay.
You know, I think I think we're at a good time. It's a good stopping point, and that's a really good segue for this week. We've talked about things you can kind of do, and next week we're going to talk about, you know, rallying the troops.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Sorry for my lack of filter and my angry talking today.
No, it's like old school Sugar and Spice. It was like listening to me a year and a half ago. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a fabulous week. Kudos to everyone that's doing all the things, even if it doesn't feel like it. You're kind of crushing it. So
You're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
Bye, friends.
Bye.